Again.
year is, well, yeah, because
Oh, you
last
got it.
time they
Yeah.
didn't do all of it, so they had to go in and do it. So, our goal tonight is, to start to put together a recommendation from this group to the board about our facilities, with regard to enrollment and, when we might need another building. So the first, actually, welcome everybody. Happy Mother's Day to all of the moms in the room. Can we start with you, Jake, and go around and just say this here so Rebecca can get our names down?
Absolutely. Jake Massey, Garwood Elementary.
I'm working on 2 computers here. Where's
You're gonna be underlined in bold.
Okay.
Nope. Are you still Jake? Still Jake Massey?
I am. Since a minute ago, you mean?
Leon Deuce, D-U-C-E, without the extra E.
He's not a 2.
No, D-U.
D-U-E-C.
No, D-U-C-E.
There's
Oh my gosh.
only one E in the word. D-U-C. There you go.
There you go.
Michael Lomberg.
B-E-R-R?
U-R-Y. So close.
Amy Camp, it's pretty easy to spell.
At some point, Michael will get that down.
Audrey. There are a couple differences here.
And then Lee, L-E.
Then Lori. It's L-O-R-I.
Hers is another one. Whoops, you're on all caps. That I never can
Yarborough. It's spelled.
No R. No O.
E-R.
R.
There's no A. Nope, you're right.
Okay, B.
R. O.
I always try to put that O there.
Hey, Rebecca.
Okay, so if we scroll down, the first bullet point is, and we'll just, kind
You
of
want to pull it up?
No, I just wanna kinda have a conversation first. So, if enrollment continues to decline, we're talking elementary right now, for this group, what would the overall enrollment need to get to before we start talking about closing a school? And do we say that it's over 2 years of that enrollment level, so it's not just a weird kind of glitch?
Yeah, 1 full year.
So what are your thoughts? Right now, we're at about 1,800 kids, and we've got 6 schools, so if they were evenly dispersed, we'd have 300 kids in a building. They're not evenly dispersed, obviously, Garwood has more kids, but, what's that magic number when we start to question whether or not?
What's our lowest enrolled?
Twin Lakes Elementary is at about 273.
I'll pull it up really quick.
At the last meeting, I think we talked about what, there was a document floating somewhere that had like capacity recommendations.
Yeah, we never found it.
Okay, gotcha.
Brian created it.
It was lost in
Yeah.
the, okay, gotcha.
Our lowest is, it's actually Spirit Lake at 279 right now.
Oh, because of their preschool.
Yep.
Twin, okay, 279.
Yep. 294, well, minus the 44, so 250 at Twin.
250.
It's actually, they have 44 pre-K too, so.
Yeah, so their number right now is 294 with counting the 44
Pre-K.
pre-K.
In 2
I think it's
classrooms.
like couple- Yeah, I was gonna say how many classrooms would
Yeah.
you take up the 2 classrooms?
Mm-hmm.
44. Okay.
Okay, and then you said 279 is the lowest that we have, but the average is 300 then, is I take it, just as a
If we,
flat average.
yeah, if we did a flat average, it would be 300.
Yeah, so I'll pull up just so you guys can see our current numbers of all of our schools. The yellow.
Are you able to have back to last year though, just to compare what their high and low was?
Yeah, so if we go back to May of last year, we were sitting at 4567, and then we're actually up a little bit.
Right, but we're up
But what
at
was the
up at the
attendance for
secondary.
this,
Yeah, we're up to
the elementary?
So let's,
If you highlight the elementary numbers,
that's right,
and
that's
then it'll give you a total at the bottom. So just, yeah,
So we're at, is that right now, or is that, yeah?
that's
we're at-
last year,
This is last
Okay,
year's
so we're at
2010.
2010, so we went
And
from
then-
2010 to 1800.
And then if we go back to here.
Oh.
We're at
alright, We're
2017.
at 2017.
Basically the
So we're
same.
about the same.
About the same,
Yep.
so,
And we have, this goes back, gosh, I wanna say back to 17,
yeah,
18.
it goes back a long way.
So,
Did we have the pre-K last year?
Yeah,
Okay, so we're about the same
We're
in
about the same.
elementary school.
Yep.
So you would have 5 schools. I'm just kind of trying to think, if you did 5 schools at 300 kids per school, not necessarily that'd be the number.
right,
You would lose an additional 300 students in the system before you could stay at what we are today as an average and have 5 schools instead of 6. Because I think once you shut down, you push all those kids that were in that other elementary out to
Right,
those
it's
other
not-
schools, so they've gotta be able to hold all those additional students. So you'd have to, you know, if you went that way, you'd have to, enrollment would have to drop another 300 students, or wait a second, not 300 anymore.
Right, let me do it now, so it's 336 right now is
Yep.
the average at, if it was.
So if you drop down to that average for 5 schools, then it would maybe make sense to drop out of school. Or we pick a lower number,
Yeah, that's what it.
275 or something.
I feel like it would even need to be a little bit lower than that,
Yeah, cause
potentially.
you'd be shutting the school not for 1 year, but you could be shutting it for
It'd be hard to get it back.
Yeah, it could be hard to get there.
Yeah.
So even maybe 250 students per school for 5 schools,
Yeah.
which would only be 1,500 students, so you'd have to lose 500 plus students from today before you ever got to the point of closing down the school.
And that's
Hopefully we'd never get.
any given time though, or the 2-year basis, or
Right.
on an average, you know, like, there's a lot of different ways to calculate
Yeah,
how to get to that number too.
but how does that affect the state funding to the school?
All of our
Because-
funding is based on average daily attendance.
So it doesn't matter how many kids are at whatever school, you're still gonna get the same dollars. And
Which is-
facility, it doesn't matter whether you got 5 schools or 6 schools.
No, that's why that's why we have to run a levy, that's why it costs us more money, because we have more schools.
Than what they would fund on their normal level.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it begs the bigger question. I mean, because we can run the numbers and find the financial tipping point of like, when is it worth closing a school? But I think the value of having a school in each isolated community is impossible to calculate.
Right,
Right.
so yeah, it has to be kind of a catastrophic.
It would have to, I would think, anyway, in my opinion, it would have to be a pretty catastrophic number.
Right.
But, I also think it just needs to come back to like, what does the community want to support? At what cost do we want to operate with 6 with 336 instead of 5 with 403?
Well, I think I mean, I think that parents, I don't know about the whole community, but parents
Sure.
definitely have kind of spoken, because when we even brought it up after the levy failed in November, the board got a lot of emails
I
from
bet.
parents saying, please don't do that. So I'm
Well,
just.
and always the worry is you're gonna be shutting down my school.
Exactly.
It's not,
It's a pretty good idea if it's somebody else's school.
exactly, it's like the not in my backyard type of thing.
Totally,
Right.
yeah.
You can shut down any one of the other elementary schools, but don't shut down mine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, just like when we were briefly talking about moving kids from Garwood, and the amount, I mean, look how many of us are here now. How many were at that one meeting out there in Twin Lakes? Because
A lot of people were concerned.
Yeah.
It was, we were talking about them.
It doesn't rise to importance until it
Yeah.
affects.
So in an elementary building, if you had 250 kids and you had 12 classrooms, 2 sections of every grade level K-5, 250 kids, you would have 20 kids in a classroom.
Which I know that a lot of the parents would be very happy about, but how much does that push up the levy need based off of what the state will fund? Because how many students in a classroom does the state fund?
Depends on the grade band. Every grade band is
Okay.
different. So for kindergarten, the state, we get 1 teacher for every 40 kindergartners.
That's
For,
crazy.
For
well,
third
it's
grade?
half day. They only fund half day kindergarten.
Right.
So you got 20 kids
Each section.
session.
First through third, I wanna say it's 20.
20 or 23, I don't remember.
I can't remember. And then it goes up to 20.
26 or 28, I think.
Yeah, it's 23.
Then when you get to the high school, the divisor comes back down again closer to 20, because they have to have more teachers, because you have to have elective teachers and, all the things that kids need to have to graduate. So that's.
So we gotta
hard.
provide levy funding for, say at 5th grade, we'd have to provide levy funding for like 7 students of every classroom.
If you had 20 kids in a classroom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It would be
cause you'd be short.
21 every 21-ish. So let me think about this for a second. Okay, so in grades, I'm gonna do this the other way. In grades K through 3, the board's number is 20. That's where they want us to be. So if you had, that's 4 grade levels, so that's 8 classrooms, so that's 160. Yes. And then 4 classrooms, 26, would be 104. So 264 would be the ideal district class sizes for elementary, 2 classrooms at every grade level. 264. If we go below 264, then you're talking about levy funds to
The levy
cover.
funds.
This is also approved at least 2 years in a row, the anomalies we're not planning, I mean, that would be it could drip the way before, but if it did it, consecutively for 2 years, then that would be cause for.
So 264 times 6 buildings would be 1584. So if we drop below, just maybe say 1500 as total enrollment for elementary, then we'd have to at least start the process of taking a look, and maybe instead of having to be as drastic as closing a school, we're looking at doing some of the attendance boundaries to get kids, so that moving kids from maybe the biggest school to one that is struggling with
I think you'd have to do that almost every 3 to 5 years now anyway, just rather you got
Yep.
all the
It's always
growth
gonna
is
be
changing in
fluctuating.
areas that you might have farm ground today, but might be houses later on.
It's amazing how fast those are all popping up.
Well, and I think it begs the question too of like the quality of education in 6 buildings of 264 versus if we could consolidate and use some of that same money for more resources. I don't know, as a parent, I would want to be able to be a consumer of that knowledge at least and be a participant in having a vote, or I know it's not a vote, being able to share my opinion. Because at that point, 264 and 6 different schools spread out between Rathdrum and Athol or Spirit Lake. I mean, that's a lot of resources. That's a lot of resources.
There's a lot of
To spread thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that I'm advocating for closing one of our schools, but I just think that's a factor that we have to consider.
I know, and as a parent, it's crazy to hear that because all I'm hearing is the flip side. Is we're running out of room, all these houses are coming, all these kids are coming, so I'm hearing on the other end
We're
of
not
it,
running out of room.
which is so crazy.
So
So
the kids are not coming.
I was saying, we have, the kids aren't coming.
That's,
Yeah, I was
it's
reading something on
really,
Facebook,
yeah.
where every house that's built, we're gonna get 2 kids, but we're not getting anywhere close to that.
Right, okay, and a lot of these kids are aging out too, so you gotta figure that is happening too, so.
But that's also just been, what, the last 5-year trend? 'Cause 5 years ago, we were talking about.
But
I mean,
since
more
COVID,
schools.
in Rathdrum, our median home price prior to COVID was
Well, right, that's a
like
huge
less
part of
than
it.
$200,000.
Right, it's
And
about
now it's like,
Now
185.
it's, now it's
Yeah.
400,000.
So who's moved,
It's
these
actually
young
getting-
families aren't moving into these houses right now.
Exactly.
It's getting over
Yeah.
500,000 now.
Yeah, it's just insane.
I know, it is.
And those are not big, beautiful, pretty homes,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
$500,000. Some of them are small.
Yeah.
And we're getting more mature or senior level individuals that come into those homes, which needs a whole different category of services than the youth do. And so, and a lot of, me personally, I'm seeing a lot of the older generation from another area coming in and doesn't necessarily want to pay for education, and that's why we're getting so close on these levy passes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're not getting young families moving in that increases the numbers in our schools, and by the same situation, we're also getting less people that want to support the schools, because they don't have their grandkids in the schools, or they don't have their kids or whatever, and it's tough.
If we are going the route of needing to close the school, cause we're just doing the possibilities, right?
Yeah,
What
this is just,
presents,
right, this is just, here's for the next 5 to 10
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
because things are so in flux. Here's like the threshold where the conversation probably needs to start.
Yeah.
And then these are the things that we recommend
Yeah.
that the board take a look at. And then, but then from there, we're gonna go to, if our enrollment starts going up, well, what do we do about that? So we have both.
Set it down.
So we have
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
scenarios.
I would think if we were to look at all of the schools, elementary schools put together, I would say like, what's the one that's not bleeding us dry, but what's the one that has the lowest enrollment and also maybe is needing the most like work on it? Is it a building that could be maybe put on hold and not have kids in it? Could it need repairs down the road? Is that like a conversation? Once
That
you
could
get
be,
in that direction,
that could be one of the things we put in there as a suggestion.
Yeah.
Or the proximity of the two schools that are very close. And then
Those
have
kids
those
could be
factors,
absorbed somewhere
they
else
would be
easier.
less impacted than,
Right.
Yeah.
one.
The geography of our district makes
Right.
shutting a school and
Very challenging.
moving kids around so challenging.
I told last meeting, I said, it looks like gerrymandering. it's like, wow, the map is really bizarre, but I mean, I get it why it was needed at the time, but, with land and everything, but it's interesting to have, for sure.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think like a rubric of some sort would be really helpful. I know when some of us got together and put together preliminary data for the board for last December for potentially closing a school, our only guidance was least impact, or like the smallest number of families impacted. And so like we were
okay.
able to highlight schools based on what's the fewest number of kids who would get bumped in different
Right.
places.
Yeah.
But ultimately it should come down to finances, like what's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what's the cost of running
Fiscally, what can we?
Garwood versus Athol
Right,
versus Twin.
yeah. Well, what happened if a school is closed? does the district still keep the building, own the land, there's just no students in the building?
Right.
Okay. And that's not the time to get repairs done on a whole building or anything. You would think in a perfect world that could happen, but,
Yep.
you know.
That's the other side to it, is when a building sits, you're gonna have way more maintenance issues.
Oh, I'm sure that there would be something happening in the building,
Oh,
so it
okay.
wouldn't sit empty.
Yeah.
If we have, you know, some, like our technology department, for example, is taking up a room at Lakeland Middle School.
Mm.
Our special education department is all crammed into one office downstairs,
Yeah.
the district level people who go from school to school. So there definitely are groups
Ways
that
to use it to keep it like alive per se.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It was also potentially talked about a while ago, and that was one of my daughter-in-law's questions, about putting the sped kids, having a school for them as well, instead of spread out into the different schools with their one-on-ones.
We,
Probably the lower functioning ones.
yeah, we talked about that, but then, and actually it was ironic because I think lots of districts are trying to figure out how to deal with, Lakeland's not unusual in this conversation. Everybody is seeing the same things happening across the state because, just the number of kindergartners, is going down every year. In fact, the state budget for education this year is based on a significant number of fewer, what they call units, than we've had in forever. So the state is recognizing that we don't need as many teachers across the state because we don't have as many kids. So,
On their social trends, Sam from the Department of Labor said in one of the meetings that we're seeing more deaths than births. And so normally it's kind of a balanced thing. You get the births and the deaths and you maintain your thing, but now you got more deaths and less births, so we're actually
that's
seeing a
a tick.
decrease in that, in the overall population. And if young adults get in their 20s and they don't start families until their 30s or 40s type of thing, then you're gonna have less kids that are going through this school program too.
Yep.
Because they're now looking at maybe 1 or 2 kids rather than 3 or 5 kids.
Yeah.
And typically the people with like the 5 kids are homeschooling,
Yeah. that's
don't
a
get
huge
that,
part of it,
but,
too.
yeah. And
yeah.
so,
So the answer to your question is, when we started kind of talking about that, we actually got guidance from the state Department of Education, Special Education Department there, that you cannot take all of your special education kids from their home schools and separate them from their peers and put them in a separate facility. So they have to have access to their same age peers, typically performing peers. So so we can't do that. We talked about maybe doing a school within a school where or at least a school within a couple of schools, so that we can maybe reduce the number of one-on-ones that we have. We can have more pairs in a smaller setting, but so we're still working through that. So I would say 264 kids would be the lowest we could go and still be somewhat fiscally kind of conservative with what it costs, because we'd obviously be reducing staff
Yeah,
Right.
staff costs would come down with
staff
that.
costs. Yeah, we'd still have our transportation costs and those kinds of things, but.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think based on what our community has valued so far, that makes a lot of sense. It does make me a little bit nervous to put a number to it, just because we're getting a little close to it.
The reality is it's a guideline. So you put, say, 264 is your magic number,
Mhm.
and you say it's gotta be that way over 2 or 3 years. And we can say that now, and in 5 years down the road, the people that sit at this table or the people that sit at the board table may decide that, oh no, we wanna keep that, drop it to 250, or we wanna raise it to 300.
And we
All we're
can't-
doing
we
is
can't
establishing
afford
a
it in
guideline
there.
right now.
Just a rough guideline. And I love the idea of having a 2-year timeline. Like, I think that's really wise.
Yeah.
And I think
yeah,
that would give us time to even communicate with our patrons. Like, hey, we've hit this number, this is kind of what's gonna happen over the next 2 years, but
Well,
to your
it's not
point
that you
about.
just hit it once, but you're
have to
continuing.
maintain
Yeah,
it.
you're below, you're below that average. But to your point, you know, we also wanna be careful, because if a number drops too much, that's a financial crisis that sometimes we don't have 2 years to
Yeah.
address.
Right, but it does give us an opportunity to try to maybe massage some of the boundaries, the schools to.
Totally.
Right, but even though you set this as a guideline, if you start seeing that number start to approach it, you're gonna know 3 or 4 years in advance before you even hit the number. If the trend keeps going, we're estimating in 3 years we'll be at this level.
Mhm.
And then we're gonna have to take some sort of action. So it's not something that just sneaks up on you.
Right.
It's
And
something
we
you're always
actually,
aware of.
we monitor, as you can see, weekly, we look at the attendance,
Yeah.
the enrollment every week, so we can.
Just to backpedal real quick, the state pays for, I'm saying just layman's terms here, so, but the state pays for how much per classroom?
It's a very.
And you said it was each group.
Right, and
But, so you don't have like an average
No.
of what they're recommending? Okay, well, what was the school board saying that they wanted?
So our board, their target numbers are 20 kids in grades K through 3, and then 26 kids in classrooms
And that made
4
it
through
to-
12.
Yeah.
4 through 12 is 26.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, cause I know I need to like walk through this for my husband. Like I said, 20 K through 6, and then what, 24 was 20,
26
oh, 26.
is 4 through 12.
4 through 12. Okay.
That's their minimum, or that's their maximum.
That's their target, that's where they would like us to be, so every, once per quarter I have to report to the board kind of what our class sizes are, and we watch the bubbles. Like Jake's 3rd grade at Garwood has been at 28 and 29 all year. And sometimes we're going to have bubbles like that, but we made the decision because of where we were financially and then going into the levy that to hold the line on that one but
It was just weird when my son was in 1st grade, I think that's when Apple ended up getting 3 1st grade classes. But then they were less than the 20, I think there was like 18 or something in it because of the 3, but then the next year they could barely keep 20 something in 2 of the classes. And my daughter's class was never that high, and now they're closer to 30. They have been for like the last 2 years, but there's 2 of them. And so it is, when I see those numbers and I digest where my kids' classrooms have been, and I feel like they're nowhere near that. Like they flex so much from year to year that.
Do we have any idea kind of what our kindergarten population is going to be next year? It's the first like COVID kids.
we don't.
Yeah, you don't know till like the week
May
before, right?
19th is
Yeah.
kindergarten
Roundup, yeah.
so we'll have a
I mean,
better.
it would be interesting to see,
idea,
are we going to have more, are we going to have less? People were home a lot.
This is the game every year.
We just always anticipate that whatever we have in kindergarten this year is what we plan for next year,
Uh-huh.
so.
And you said May 19th, so we're talking next week.
Mhm.
Well, and those are early numbers. So to your point about the week before school, usually
Yeah.
kindergarten roundup, which is happening next week, gives us about half. And then the
Okay.
rest kind of trickle in over the course of the summer.
What time is that?
All day.
All day,
All day.
9 to 4.
Right.
A lot of families move during the summer too, right?
Mhm.
Before school starts.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're ready to
Well, it's the
go.
prime time. You don't want to pull
Yeah.
your kids out 1 week before
Right.
school gets out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You don't want to
Yeah.
move in after everybody's made their friends at the beginning of the school year.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense.
So, traditionally, when you build a school, do you plan, say, 2 or 3 classrooms for each grade? What is it, 2 or 3, or is it?
Used to be 3. I mean, when our oldest buildings were built, well, can't even say that, with the exception of John Brown. So when Apple and Spirit Lake were built, and maybe it was because of where they were. Both of those schools, well, Alpha originally only had 3 classrooms when it was first built. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, in the 60s. So, and we've just continued to add on to it. So Alpha, Spirit Lake, and Twin Lakes. So half of our schools are designed for 2 classrooms at each grade level. John Brown, Betty Kiefer, and Garwood are designed to have 3 at each grade level. And that was 3 at each grade level, grades K through 6, and now we only have K-5. So you actually, there is a little bit of.
There's a little bit of
room
extra
there.
room.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we're using that for specialists now, which we probably didn't have
Right.
in dedicated classrooms then.
Well, when Garwood and Betty Kiefer were built, we didn't have much specialist time.
No, I believe you.
They were hopping between schools, so they
Oh, sure.
didn't need a classroom necessarily.
I mean, just thinking about operational costs, do we need to have a couple of different numbers then? Like if Garwood is designed to function with 3 classrooms at every grade level, does that number need to be different than Apple's number? Or are we okay leaving it at 264?
I think just because of how traumatic it would be to a community to lose a school, I think if we just say the bare minimum that we think we should be running is 2 classrooms per grade level at all 6 schools.
Regardless whether they got 3
Whether
classrooms.
they have more space or not.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not advocating for closing my school. I just, if this is the 10-year plan, I just think we.
Yeah, or we're seeing that trajectory just keep
Yeah,
taking.
might be
Yeah.
worth
Well, actually, we look much better this year than we did at one point last year, so that's good news.
So throughout the course of the year, you see your numbers kind of go like this throughout the year?
Yeah, because the last time I checked to see how many elementary kids we had, we were somewhere between 18 and 1900. And now we're at 2017. So that's good.
What is that? It'd be kind of interesting to see what that flex is throughout a school year. Like the highs and the lows, what's that average that it moves up and down throughout the year?
Well, we could do a little number
It's a
crunching.
Just to
Great
give you a, kind of a,
Typic-
because there is.
Yeah, typically, we typically end the school year lower than we started. Secondary level, that seems to be, that happens a lot at the secondary level. We have kids moving, they're going online or doing something other than in person. Yeah, it seems like spring, I guess the times I would look would be around Christmas time and around spring break. Those are at least when I was a principal.
Yeah. We always kind of joke in the office that after every break, we get like 4 new families.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how
That's
it
what
has
my
worked
mother
out.
says.
And this is the first year where it hasn't been that way, actually, but.
So in September, we started at 46, 49, and now we're at 46.13.
So we haven't lost that many. I mean, this has been a good year for us.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, and just from church, we're seeing a couple of the younger families moving into the subdivision over in Hayden. And so that's that new one over by Government Way in Lancaster.
The Hayden Canyon.
Yeah. And so I started asking around, what is it, because we've seen no young families for so long. Asked them, and they said, well, they're selling the houses for less than $400,000.
Oh, well, that's,
And
if you
that's
build
why.
it and they can afford it, they will come.
They're not zoned for us, are they?
They are.
They are.
That whole
Oh, I thought Hayden
subdivision is-
absorbed them.
No, Hayden doesn't
Or
have
I
a
mean,
school
Coeur d'Alene, I'm
district.
sorry,
Yeah,
Coeur
Hayden.
d'Alene absorbed them.
No.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, there's
That's
a building
all
there.
That's
That's
all
all
Garwood.
Garwood.
And then, I know, I mean, it got shut down for temporarily, but Meyer and Meyer Bagel, well, either side, Meyer Bagel or Meyer and,
yeah, the 400 homes right there.
yeah. But
Yeah,
that's where,
eventually.
5 to 10 year plan, but that's probably gonna be done in like 3 years. It really
Oh, it
will.
won't be in 3 years.
You know?
It won't be done in 3 years. They'll be barely starting in 3 years.
You think so? God, I feel like everything happens
Well,
so
I work for
fast
the
out
city.
there. Oh, okay.
So-
Well, I don't know.
They have
Like, blinking
to,
things
they
are
have to
built.
do
Yeah.
a subdivision plan if they get the rezone done. That'll be another 6 months out.
Okay.
And then they've got to do infrastructure improvements, and you probably, I mean, I never like to give a date, but you're probably looking at 2 years before you see the first one and 10 years before you probably see the last one.
Okay, got it, yeah.
But it just, so much stuff has to be
Mhm.
done. But everybody sees it as bare ground today.
Right.
And all of a sudden, there's 50 houses there
Yeah.
tomorrow, and we just don't keep track of time
Right.
with
How-
that, so we just
Yeah.
like, oh,
It
wait a
does
second.
feel that way,
that's
but I
good
think
point.
I think the reason people assume that is because, like, even this subdivision south of Betty Kiefer on 41,
Mhm.
it just seems like they started building and now there just are a gazillion houses out there,
Yeah.
but nobody knows all the lead
The
up
back,
time.
yeah, the backstory
Yeah.
and the permits and
Yeah,
the
exactly.
checking and all that, yeah, I get that for sure. Yeah, do we know what's going on, in Spirit Lake area? We just went down there on 54, and there's like so much going on, are they doing?
Oh, they're just widening the
They're
road.
just, that's it, they're just widening the road, there's no like subdivisions going on, we're trying to watch and look, we're like, what's going on over here?
No.
Like more homes over here.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
building something across from Timberlake High School.
Yeah,
that
so
we-
they have a big retaining wall and
Yeah, well,
everything.
it's really a nice wall, but we have no
Yeah.
idea what's going in there at this
I thought
point.
it was just storage.
Yeah, I didn't think it was
storage,
for houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
It's
interesting
not
because
technically the same.
over the last 9 years, I've seen, even within the county, what a lot of people don't realize is the county land that was big timber land, one person owns like 200 acres and all there is trees on it, is now 5-acre lots as far as I can see. So you're seeing growth not just in the city, but you're seeing it in the county area.
Yeah, just a little bit more spread out, not so tightly clustered.
Right.
Right, yeah.
But they're not selling like the one out on 53, those, is there 16, 20 lots out there, and I don't know if any of them were sold yet.
It's 'cause the
Yeah.
market, I know the rates are ridiculous, you can't.
Yeah, the interest rates,
Everyone's
and that's
there right now
what the
too,
market
yeah.
will drive it, is the market. See houses that sell for less than 400,000, they'll get eaten up by young families. Prices at 500 to 600,000, they're slow to go, and if they get bought, it's seniors and
Yeah.
those people that move here that have equity someplace else.
Right, they can pay cash, yeah.
So it's just really weird how the market drives all of that stuff.
Which then affects school numbers in the long
Yeah.
run.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so are we, I think I said 1564 was the. is
Yeah,
what I
that's
said?
264 students
Per
in
school.
per school.
So-
Before you close anything down.
264.
Right.
That's kind of
Yeah,
like the
15.
floor.
So do we wanna, instead of being quite so specific, drop it down to say like 1560, 1550?
Sure.
1550 sounds
Okay.
right in that ballpark. It's an even
Nice.
number to
Even
remember.
And so, if we see that level of enrollment at the elementary over 2 years,
That would trigger an evaluation of some sort.
I would even think if we're getting down to 1,600, that's, or even 1,650, start looking and talking, like you said, it's gonna, if we
yeah,
see
we're
the
not just
trend
gonna wait
going.
until,
No,
we got one more kid, we don't have to talk about it yet.
Starting to
Don't say anything and then right
starting
away
to
to
talk
1550.
even at 1,650 and then make a final decision when it gets closer.
Yeah, because I think there would need to be,
It's gotta be.
in my mind, at the end of the year, you're looking at final numbers, kind of where we are, of what we're projecting for next year. And if we're projecting that we're getting closer to that number, then you need to start having a conversation at the board level so that we are bringing the community kind of into the loop that, we're concerned right now about enrollment and, so that
you
people
can
aren't
say
caught off guard.
1550 is kind of like our floor, but at 1700 we start having conversations
Mhm.
about this.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning both numbers. I think it's worth mentioning the 260-ish per school and the overall, because it's also possible with all of the growth that you end up with 1,800 elementary kids, but one school has way less than that. So.
But if the overall average number is, you know, if we're at 1,600, even if Garwood still was sitting at 380 and we had other schools that were under 200 or right at 200, before I recommended closing a school, I'd be looking at adjusting attendance zones. That all needs to be part of what happens in that 2-year period as you're managing that declining enrollment.
Wouldn't it would be almost kind of, and I don't have a kid in elementary school anymore, so this isn't sensitive to me, but wouldn't you have to say, like, at least every 5 years you're gonna have to take some sort of census of the schools and readjust boundaries as needed? Because otherwise we're doing it onesie twosie at a time and all that. I mean, it's hard because no matter what you pick, somebody's kid is gonna be in the middle of their time at that elementary school. But you're gonna have to reallocate as you need to, just so that you can have a balance. You don't necessarily want Garwood at, you know, 550 kids while John Brown or Betty Kiefer's at 250.
What was Apple's and let's give that at 280.
Apple was 288.
Yeah, that's so low for Apple. One of the things, and this is getting off of what we're talking about right now, but the Hayden Canyon development, one of the things this group had talked about was recommending to the board that we actually zone that development for Apple and run a bus just straight up 95 to Apple Elementary, and rather than having them zoned to Garwood, just off the bat, so that.
Which would be interesting because the East Garwood kids are zoned for Garwood, so you're having to pass the East Garwood kids to pick up the Hayden kids and then go back, you know. The boundaries are gonna be so interesting.
The thing that I worry about with something like that, because I get it, like today that makes sense. Like, boy, that sounds like an easy Band-Aid, you know. But we also need to really be considerate that we have to be competitive with these other schools. I mean, Hayden Canyon neighborhood has Hayden Canyon Charter School right in
there,
it. And we need to be competitive with that school for enrollment. And how many parents would want to drive out to Apple for events and to be involved and to volunteer?
That's true too,
That would be a tougher sell, for sure.
They've got a very limited number, you know, I mean, in their lottery system as well, so. And I know one of the teachers, she's my niece, and their junior high kids she doesn't even send her kids there for junior high. The little kids are great, but she said that 5th, 6th, 7th graders, she's not happy with that part of the school, so it's.
Well, even if you did that for elementary, then what does middle school and high school look like? Is that Timberlake?
I think, I guess I don't know, if that's known for Lakeland High School or Hayden Canyon, I would assume would be zoned for Lakeland High School, but like if you're talking Garwood and Chilco in that area, I think, don't those kids go to Timberlake?
It's kind of a 50-50.
Well,
I think it's a weird line.
So it's right, actually I know where it is, because I live right there. It's, it used to be, it's not actually Chilco, so anyone that's south of Chilco, off of Chilco is Lakeland and Garwood and all that. Anyone that's that new development, Eclipse, all those people north of Chilco is Timberlake, Twin Lakes, and all that over there. So it's like right there.
Yeah.
Yes, and at some point, I mean, with all of the building that's happening, it's like, it would freak every single parent in the district out, but at some point you almost have to, like,
shift.
erase all the lines.
And start over.
That's-
That's what Matt and I were talking about.
That's
We're
like
getting to
that
the point where we have to
reevaluation
start over.
every 5 years,
Yeah.
10 years, or whatever it is.
That's just
So at what point do we talk about making a decision about the Hayden Canyon? Cause more families are moving in, those kids are starting to go to, I'm assuming it's Garwood, and they're gonna be mad when we say, no, you're going up to Athol. So if we're gonna do that, it needs to be done.
Before it's
Quickly,
built.
Yeah.
or
do you go up to Garwood on the west side, goes up to Athol, and so that Garwood can absorb Hayden Canyon on the east side?
Right, and that all is a zone attendance change.
We're only looking at one little blurb, but we have to look at the entire map. So if this gets shifted, this can get shifted, and this can get shifted. So like when we were first talking about the shifting of the changes in that area, you know, Matt and I got our papers, we printed it, we had this big old thing spread out, and we went, everything has to be changed, which is painful then for everybody, right? But then we thought, how do we grandfather in? But then that messes with busing, right? Because
Well,
you
if
can't,
you
if you're getting
grandfather in, then
grandfathered
parents
in,
have to drop
they
them
have to drop their kids off, but then it messed with busing and route schedules. It just was a big headache, but really, like you said, boundaries need to get changed based off of the growth and, you know, school sizes and everything, and it's uncomfortable and parents are gonna get mad, but
or you can, you know,
yeah.
spot zone, which is never fun. But like if the Baker and Meyer thing gets approved, and if there's a subdivision, and if they start building, knowing when they say, okay, we're gonna create a subdivision of 400 houses, then at that particular point in time, say, okay, this whole section's gonna move to Twin Lakes or John Brown, then that very first house already knows where it's going, and you don't have a transition change.
Right, the problem with that is, and we actually did that with,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a new subdivision, but we took that whole Corbin Crossing
Yeah.
and moved them out of Garwood and up to John Brown, right, John Brown?
Mhm.
Or was
Yeah.
it Betty? John Brown.
It was John
Yeah,
Brown.
And, it just makes all the lines wonky, so right in the middle of the Garwood zone, you got a little
Block, yeah.
pink subdivision. So
Yeah, it's not
it-
easy.
No, it really, I mean, to be the most efficient
We did the
and
same thing with.
and not be passing buses on the same road,
Right,
going
right.
to
Well,
different
and then
schools.
and then the bus budget is getting higher and higher because they're running and we're breaking down, and yeah, it gets hairy at that point.
Totally. We did the same thing with the new neighborhood by the Lions Club. That's now
The
zoned for
biking one.
twin.
Mhm.
In the early stages, we have a couple of kids in there before it got rezoned, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I mean-
we moved that to Twin, but
It's easier on parents, not necessarily easier on the school district.
to know ahead of time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
100%
for
agree
sure.
with that. Well, yeah. It's just all of the growth for the most part is Betty Kiefer or Rockwood, and so far what's coming into Betty Kiefer they're not coming with kids because Betty Kiefer's numbers continue to go down instead of up.
I remember when we first moved here, Betty Kiefer was the one that was having problems, cause,
We were 550 kids.
It was
when I
at
moving
max,
so
yeah.
far.
yeah.
Well, those parents still live there now. Their kids are now
Yeah.
off,
Right.
off living somewhere else,
So
so,
true.
yeah.
Yep.
I think I asked this once before, but I'm curious, from the city's side, when we send out those subdivision notices and we ask for agency notification, I know typically Brian had just done the universal, like, and I think I seen even one of them, at least for us, that said, you know, you could possibly you can recommend a donation type of a thing, but does the CFO or whoever's, I think that's generally who's responding to those, I feel like from the city standpoint, and just being blunt, the school gives basically no opinion, every time, and yet the school is impacted by it, and so I asked, like, can the school district weigh in a little bit more, or ask some more questions, or have some data and criteria?
We actually, for
Say
a
we have
while,
trigger.
our letters were, while we recommend that growth is good for communities, we are opposed to this because we cannot keep up.
We got a few of those.
Yep. But we have not been, we've gone more to the neutral letter because our schools are not full right now. We're not seeing new families come in with young kids and
Like you don't have like an argument to back it up.
You would still have trigger points though, I would assume, you know,
Oh, yeah,
a housing complex of 200 or 400 or 600, you know, you have different criteria that could impact all of the data.
But it's
changing.
not, it isn't right now. And so any of the subdivisions where the houses are gonna start in the 400s, we're not getting elementary kids in those.
No, I meant units, not dollar amounts.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
looking
we
at
can't-
values of
yeah,
homes,
we
because
can't even-
the city wouldn't know the values of those homes necessarily, that's not part of our.
But that's part of the problem, is
Right.
because that's a major thing, when the houses start at 500, you're not getting people to move in there that's got kids going to school.
Right, but I'm saying early on at that decision-making time of if this is an impact or not to your neighboring agency, there should be a unit count that could potentially make assumptions of what you're, you know, we would assume if you're building 500 houses that could impact us, and, you know, I just,
Yeah,
But
that
even
would
then
give,
it's
that would
hard
be good
because
information.
In
yeah.
2016, you could say, okay, yeah, we're gonna get almost a single elementary kid for every house that was built.
Sure.
In 2025, I could be building 25 houses and not get a single kid.
Right, that criteria is going to change, but I just say that would help, that would give cities a little bit more, you know, we would weigh in your input because you're actually saying, okay, what is that trigger point? And I hear my council say that, what's the trigger point? Well, how many schools, you know, cause we're looking at the 200 houses. Well, what does that do to the school district? And that's what they're wanting to know, but then the school district just kinda says,
Lori, it's because they don't know.
right, I know, it's just hard.
Yeah, and we've tried to, I mean, we don't wanna come out and say we 100% oppose this when there's gonna be zero impact to us, because as long as growth is controlled and the city has the infrastructure to support it and the personnel. So in my mind, right now, to be perfectly honest with you, the groups that need to be talking to you are your police and your fire, because those are doesn't matter how expensive the home is,
Right.
there are people living in the
they're
home
gonna deal with it.
that they're gonna have to deal with.
Ironically, police and fire are not on that list, they don't ever get.
That's who I would be asking right now,
Our
because.
police department will chime in when it's like apartment building complexes.
Sure, but you have a department, we know, we're with
Right.
the county, so, like,
Yeah.
they don't ever have, they're not even on our agency list, that's a good question, I'll have to figure out why not.
Cause right now, I can't intelligently guess
Yeah,
at the number
know
of
what you
kids, like
mean.
we reached out when we started hearing in Rathdrum all of the, apartment complexes that were going in. I reached out to Dina in Post Falls and said, you know, what is the entity count, what are you getting? And I think it was like 1 kid for every 5
Yeah, it
units.
was slow.
And so that's what we assumed we were gonna get. Jessica's
We don't
not here
even know
tonight,
that.
but in that whole big gigantic unit or apartment complex on Lancaster,
Yeah, she said there were just a couple more.
there's like
There's 5
5
students that
kids
are
that
transferred
get on the
to
bus.
school.
Mhm.
And I think there are 22 buildings, how many
Where are
buildings
the
are
There's a
there?
lot of buildings.
But they ended up,
But
they're not
but
getting out of their mom's basement.
That's what it is. I know.
What we're seeing in those apartments is more college age people that are sharing the apartments with,
Okay.
like dorms.
Yeah.
And then seniors,
Because they don't wanna
a lot
live
of
in their mom's
seniors.
basement
Yeah,
anymore.
I have 3 adult children in their young 20s, and that's what they're having to live in is apartments.
And I am fully anticipating that happening to my situation too. Like this is where we're going. And like, how do they survive and live? Unless they're living with 5 people in an apartment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to be able to stay in this area,
Yeah.
that's what they're having to do.
Yeah, and I've got kids that, my son's married, has 2 kids. They're still living in a rental, even though he's got a really good job and stuff, because he can't afford the down payment on a $500,000 to $600,000 home,
Yeah.
not on what he's making.
Totally.
So,
Yeah, we're pricing people out of our communities.
Yeah. So I get why there needs to be a neutral letter, because it's like, you know, yeah.
unless we had a solid way to measure what the impact was going to be, but that's constantly changing all the time.
Right.
Didn't you order that crystal ball?
I'm still waiting for it, Lori. Amazon has not delivered yet.
Me too.
Okay, so where did we land?
So it was 1,550 before we close anything down, 1,700 will trigger the evaluation. And we
And-
look at it each year.
Okay.
I'm gonna have more detailed notes,
Yeah.
I'll add in later. But.
And then,
Are you looking at it each year, or is it like a rolling 2 years, so that it can be?
I think
if
we'll
you-
evaluate
if you
it
start
each
to
year.
see that, you don't necessarily have to wait till the end of the school year to
right,
see.
yeah, no,
if it's
yeah, exactly.
a rolling 2 years, then
Yeah.
you'll see
Yeah,
that
we could
trend.
start having the conversation in January because
Mhm.
our enrollment just dropped a bunch after Christmas vacation. And we're worried, yeah. I think, in the notes, if you could put that, like a sub-bullet, and just so that we kind of put some steps that we think would be appropriate. One would be to look at attendance zones to see if modifying those, helps. And then, obviously we would recommend, informational meetings with community as they work through the process.
Is that to get information or to give information?
I think both.
I think it needs to be a two-way conversation.
Well, it eases the shock value and it eases the pain level. Cause, parents talk to other parents, so if the parents are going to the meetings and hearing about it and hearing the information about it, then they're going to talk amongst themselves, not have pickets and pitchforks and.
Yeah, cause, nothing gets parents upset more than messing with their elementary school child.
Just makes sense.
Yep. But, trying to change a Lakeland hawk to a Timberlake tiger,
Oh my gosh, how funny.
can you imagine the trauma of that?
Oh, yeah.
It'd be major.
That would be huge.
Especially if you already have a Letterman's jacket.
Right.
My daughter
Have
gets
to give
mad
her
if I
credit.
wear anything Timberlake, and I'm like, I work for the district.
Yeah, my
They're
daughter's-
both great schools.
Yes.
My daughter's the same way, so.
That's
Okay,
hilarious.
so we have half an hour, so we'll start to tackle the next one. So if enrollment increases, we're just gonna go building by building, and Rebecca, has maps, so let's start with Athol.
If this helps, we just did all of this, in December, if you want to remember.
Well, what I wanna do is I wanna go actually look at the floor plans and talk about how many classroom spaces do we have, so that we're being super intentional in saying, okay, we think we can get Garwood to 500, but if we do that, these are the spaces that we're using to do it, right?
Yep.
So I just wanna kind of bring it up.
Totally.
With that, will we even come close to like occupancy limits of building?
No, the maximum capacity is much higher than the functional maximum capacity. So, oh, sorry. Where's my Apple map?
I'm not finding it, and this is the new one you just showed me.
Which is, I shared two with you. Yeah, remember I told you that they weren't all in.
Nope,
No,
that's
that's
wrong.
not the one we want.
District Safety Task Force.
Well, I shared two with you. Where? Do I need to go share it again? I shared the whole district safety task
Mhm.
force with you.
Which is this one.
So,
So when we go in here,
and then search for, building maps, if you, can you search?
not the school maps.
No, search in the bar for building maps. There it
There
is.
we go.
I have it.
Okay.
Okay, so Apple has 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That computer lab could go, that's 22. Actual classroom spaces.
How many kids do you wanna?
So it's gonna be dependent on what levels. So do we use an average of?
Use an average of 22.
Well,
23.
Okay.
but didn't you say your board wants between 20 and 26, depending upon the grade
Right,
size?
but if our enrollment goes up and we don't have space, the numbers are going up.
Right, I
Until
get that,
until we
so I
can-
mean, I was just thinking, are you thinking 30 kids per classroom is probably like your max that you wanna have in the
30?
building? I'm
I
just
know.
throwing out a number.
I taught first grade for a long time, and if you gave me 36-year-olds, I might cry.
Well, if you do an average of 23, you still might have some classrooms of 30 in
Yep,
there.
you could, just depending. So I said, what did I say, 22?
22 classrooms with 23 kids is 506.
Okay, so I would think that if we get to the 506, Apple's pretty full.
Apples.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
I know, we're
that actually.
I know, that's a lot of kids in that building.
But they're losing then every specialist classroom. They're losing their computer lab.
All they would have is their library.
They would have a library and a gym.
Mm-hmm.
And the other issue that we've run into in some of the schools is lunchroom capacity too.
Right, yeah.
Oh, you know what else? But you know what, Jake?
The gym is already.
We also have special ed
Yeah.
that we've gotta take out.
Oh, so,
Special ed's not
okay, so
included
how
in
many
that
rooms is that?
Average.
So
maybe
there were
so-
22 classrooms.
Yep.
If my building was super full, I would put all of my special ed kiddos in one classroom, but Kathy's got a couple programs, cause she's got
She
the
needs
life
2
skills
rooms at
programs
least.
up there, life skills program, and she
Apple?
has,
So 2
Elementary
rooms
life
for,
skills.
2 rooms for special needs?
I thought they didn't start till June.
So 2
2 or
special
3.
needs. Yeah, let's be conservative and say 2.
Okay.
And then they are a title school.
Okay.
What's that?
Does title need a classroom?
All I know is they get funding.
I mean, I know I'm arguing against my own interests here, but.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could use other spaces.
With a title room, that puts them at 437.
Yeah, that's too low.
Just you make a good point with the lunchroom. Is there like fire capacity for how many kids can even be in the lunchroom? Even if you're like stagger them with schedule, like
There's a life safety.
yeah, like you know what I mean? Like the
Well,
school
right
can only have
now,
so many.
we're running at most of our schools, I think, 4 lunch sessions, so.
So trying to make that number like even out. Spread out.
So they have just a few kids in there right now, so if you did 4, you'd be fine. But I feel like we probably need to up the number in a classroom.
I mean, we're only at 413 kids under enrollment, and we're running 6 lunches, and it's still crowded. So.
Lunches, oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
But your lunches are.
You're running 6 lunches?
15.
6 20-minute lunches, and we're out of seats.
Wow. Is your
Our
lunchroom
lunchroom
tiny?
just isn't.
It's tiny, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
the
it's
same
the same
size
as Betty Keeper.
Do you have round tables or
With same round tables as Betty Keeper.
Yeah, that's probably the difference, because when I was principal, we had
We
those
have the long
ones,
ones.
you can get more
Oh.
kids at those
Yeah.
tables. So,
It's been a long time since I've been to Betty Keeper lunchroom, and it was long tables with my daughter, but she graduates this year, so that's been a long time.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't need to hang this up too much. I just think
Yeah.
that would be a factor for some of our smaller schools.
Well, even does the gym have a capacity too, like assemblies or something, like is there
Yeah,
a
but
capacity
it's-
with that, or is
it's
this way,
way more.
we're good, okay, we're good.
I think we might need to use a higher number than 23 if we're gonna say, like, this building is packed, because Kathy's had 413 kids.
Yeah.
And no problem.
And we're not reaching there yet with the 22.
So 20 classrooms at 25 students is 500.
Oh gosh, not very many years ago.
You said how many kids per classroom?
25
25
gets us to
kids.
500.
Let's go with that one.
Okay.
25 kids per classroom?
Yeah.
Yeah,
25, yeah. could be
25 kids, but
multiplier.
that's not pulling a special classroom for title?
It is, and so.
Oh, I
So it
did
would be
not.
22.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't.
No, cause
No.
that
Or you
was
could delete
20
it.
is 25 would be
So we're gonna
500.
use
So
19
19.
classrooms.
Yeah.
It's 470.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's- Yep, I mean, that's at least a,
And the numbers what?
Yeah, that's
Jake?
cozy for sure. 475.
that's cozy.
But even in those special needs, you're gonna, I mean, that's 475, I wanna careful with my wording, but regular students, because your
It's
special
all
needs
students.
students are gonna go into another classroom, aren't they?
Not for the whole day.
That'd be an
They-
additional.
Oh,
Yeah,
they're
they
in
would
the
get
classroom,
full.
and then they go for certain periods of time,
Yeah.
okay. I was thinking they were in their own
The
little
life
classroom.
skills kids are, for the most part, in their special ed classroom all day long. But they'll go in and do like specials with their homeroom class and maybe morning meeting.
Mm.
The majority of their instruction is elsewhere. Okay, Betty Kiefer has 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is not a full-size room, that's special ed, 11. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 22 full-size classrooms. I didn't count the special ed and I didn't count the title room.
So you don't have to delete them.
But you need one more special ed room, because room 3 is just a conference room.
No, room 3 is, this is special education. When I was in,
So we
when I
have
was the
one room
principal
for
in
special ed?
Vancouver, we had one special ed
I think
classroom,
that's-
and that was it.
Okay, okay.
This is, yeah, cause this is the little sensory room right here.
Yeah, right now they're using.
They have, they're spread out.
Okay, gotcha.
But
Okay.
if they had to make do,
They could fit in there.
So 22 is the.
22 full-size classrooms.
Is the number we're using.
Yep.
So that's 550.
Yep, that's where we were, and we were busting at the seams.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's at 25 students?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's at 550 is the magic number there.
Yep. Okay, so then Garwood should be exactly the same, right?
Yeah, every time we've done this, it's been the same, so I'm
I'm
pretty
gonna double
sure.
check to make sure that you don't have any weird things going on.
Some secret rooms that we're going after.
Well, at one point, Garwood was so big, we actually built classrooms in the library.
Yes, you
Mhm.
cut one of the resource rooms in half and.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Squeeze
5,
this in
6, 7,
there.
8, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah, just a couple years ago, we had a
12.
kindergarten class in the conference room.
13,
That's what it
14,
was, yeah.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. You have 23 classrooms.
Not
But-
counting the special needs.
So I didn't count this one. This is your this is where the counselor is, right? Or it used to be.
You're right.
So I didn't
So
count
that's,
this, I didn't count this one.
Okay.
Then you would have special ed ones, so 22, same as Betty Kiefer.
And then room 25, I think it is, that's right, the first red one in the bottom right.
Yes, this one.
Is, I don't think we're supposed to put a classroom in there, cause there's no window, no
We're
door.
working on that, cause Betty Kiefer's the same way.
Okay.
That's where we have
So,
our title reading.
We're
stuff.
22 or 23?
They're 22.
Okay.
So
Oh, yeah, that's the
550 is
reason
the
why
magic
So the
number.
same
Upstairs.
thing.
Yep.
550, okay.
So John Brown.
Okay, John Brown has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What the heck? 13. What is this?
That's a classroom.
Why is it like, why do you name it like that?
I think probably just computer logistics of
Okay,
making the
thir-
emergency
I was
map.
like, well, I don't understand what we did here, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And then this is kind of their special ed,
Yeah, I
area,
wouldn't,
right?
I have never been back there, but I don't think we would count it.
yeah, no, I think this is special ed. And then this is special ed, so they have 21 classrooms, so maybe double check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19,
Be 525.
So, pretty close, 525.
And one special ed,
They've got like a whole complex.
so,
They could put special ed and title in there, or title could go into room 7, so we don't have to take
I'll
anything
just
out.
put multiple.
Did you count room
Special ed.
5 down next to the library? That's not quite shaded in the red. Is that a whole classroom down there?
No,
Oh, it's
it's
for the library.
this right here. No,
Okay,
this is like a little closet where we used to do like SLP stuff.
okay, gotcha.
So we said 525?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Spirit Lake.
Is the one that's not in this folder, and you have to go to the other folder. So let's do all these, and then
Okay.
we'll go back to Spirit Lake.
Okay, so then
Twin.
twin.
He's down at the bottom. Okay, so Twin has 8, 12, 15, 19, but they need, wait, we've got preschools.
So 2 for the preschool.
These are 2 preschool. So we have to keep those. And then a special ed, and they are not a title school right now,
Right.
so we don't have to worry about title. So I say 15, so 12.
Okay.
So why
So
is
300.
Twin the only one with preschool? What?
300?
It just like
Yeah,
consolidates
but
them all
that,
in one
I
location.
would be
It's
really
central.
curious about that, cause they've been
So
over
any,
300 in
so
very
it's
recent
a
history, and that's
preschool for,
been
or
fine.
Yeah.
pre-K for all kids?
It's like a special needs
Yeah, they
preschool,
have-
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and then a
Oh,
few
special,
typicals
okay,
are
so
here.
it's, you have to qualify to go to
Yes.
it.
2, 3,
Yeah, we have 44 kids in that
In
program
preschool
right
right
now.
now?
17 minus
I'm
1,
hoping
so
that
16.
Brady can get picked as a typical character. She's doing a speech at
Right.
Brooklyn right now, and they love her. I'm like, oh, hopefully she can get picked as a typical kid. That'd be awesome.
Can we look at Twin one more time?
Uh-huh. Did I miscount?
Well, I feel like that number 300 is really low.
Well, so we can't count these two, so 6, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, oh, and
So
then
16
16.
times 25 is 400.
There, that's better.
60.
Sorry, Jake.
No,
It's
you're
400.
totally fine.
So we're still at 300 kids from now on?
400.
400.
400?
Yep.
And
Oh,
go
so
to-
we've got
Lakewood.
So
How many
Lakewood
classes?
Middle
So there were
School,
4 more.
I don't
Yes.
know how to do this.
16.
Well, yeah. Okay, we're moving on to middle school. I think we need to, the number probably needs to be closer to 30
Okay.
per classroom. If we're saying we're crowded,
Mhm.
right? Okay, so now I'm just gonna count classrooms because at any given time, kids are in classrooms with the exception of whoever's on prep.
What about life skills?
Well, yeah, we'll count all that stuff too. I'm just gonna count classrooms and then we'll have to figure out how many of the classrooms we're gonna use.
I got you.
Okay, so this is band,
Mhm.
so I'm not gonna count it.
It's gotta be gen ed
Yeah, okay.
or core classes.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, gym, there are 2 classrooms up here, so that's 2. That's just the entrance. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, bless you,
Bless you.
11,
Thank you.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 6 is 35.
Mm-hmm.
But out of that, so these 2 are tech, so I can't count those.
33.
33. And then we have life skills. Jacob's classroom, Roberta's classroom, I think we have, so 2 other special ed, so 3 special ed.
Okay.
That puts us to 30.
30.
But not all of those are gonna be used all the
I
time.
know, cause they're like,
Cause
they're not staying central on that one.
1/6 of the staff is on prep.
Every hour.
So if you
Every
put
hour.
teachers on a cart then, or had them share classrooms,
And
you
they-
could really,
Okay, so we're gonna do 30 kids times however,
30 classrooms is
so
900.
900 kids, yep, and we at one point had
900
900 kids in that
students?
building.
Wow.
Okay.
When the freshmen were still at the middle school.
I was gonna say, was this only for 7, 8, or was this 6, 7, 8?
It was 7, 8, 9 when we were.
Oh, 7, 8, 9.
What is
When we
it?
were at 900.
What is it now?
6, 7, 8.
670 or 660 something.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm thinking grade level, sorry.
Gotcha. Oh.
Okay, let's do Timberlake.
Okay, and Timberlake has 2 classrooms and a portable outside,
Okay.
so that's 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I was trying to get my bearing for walking in here. Yeah, there's the office, okay. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
And then you have 101, that's kind of in the yellow. That's above the office.
17.
And they have a resource and a life skills.
Yeah, so the life skills is over here.
Okay.
So it's 17 total classrooms, and then they have 2 special ed teachers right now, but if they were full, they'd have to put the special ed teachers in the same classroom, so 15 classrooms.
Okay.
Was that 17 counting the 2?
Is that counting the 2 in the portable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, minus 2, yeah, 17, is that what I said?
He's at 15, so.
Wait,
I don't think
Plus-
you started with the 2 in the very beginning. I think you
Yeah,
were saying
plus-
there's 2 at the beginning.
plus 2.
And that's why I put 15 classrooms,
Yeah,
2
okay.
portable.
Okay, so
So-
17.
Okay.
So that's 510.
And what's there right now? 400. Over 400.
Do you remember the max that they had at one point?
They've never been.
Max.
Never.
Okay, so we don't know if we can push the threshold.
Right. Might push Mr. McDougal.
Oh.
But, okay, ugh.
And this
Gosh, here
is-
we go. Okay. Alright, this is Lakeland High School, they have classrooms everywhere. So I'm not gonna count the gym and the weight room. This is art and industrial mechanics.
Your
So I can
drama.
do 3, one of these is drama,
Yep.
but we can count one of them, I mean count them, so I'm gonna count them 3, cause some of these others are electives and I don't know which ones are. So 3, 4, 5. This is the chemistry, and there's like a lab thing here, I think this is lab. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So,
That one is hard.
this is the office, I think this is the counselor.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
counselors,
So,
that's a
this is
bathroom.
the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so 3, 7, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. This is not easy. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40.
That's the library.
Okay, so 40 classrooms.
Minus 2.
Well, they have life skills.
Mhm.
Just one.
And then they have Lauren, and then they have four total special ed classrooms.
Okay.
What is Space 50?
So we're gonna do 36.
The
Yeah.
gym? I guess
That's a gym.
That's the auxiliary gym. That was the
big
original
gym.
old gym.
So it's 36 already.
So 36 classrooms at 30
Times 30.
is 1,080.
Yep, that's pushing it. But we've been at 900,
Yep.
so that's basically a few more kids in
What
our
are we at this year?
classrooms.
Do you remember what
We're at like 870.
Yeah. And Timberlake High School.
I didn't put Mountain View on there because they only take what they can manage somehow. Okay, Timberlake High School, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37.
All those behind the gym are electives, aren't they?
Yeah.
Shop.
I think this is art and industrial arts up here, so probably 35, we wouldn't count those
Okay.
classrooms. 35, and then they have 2 special ed classrooms, so
So 33.
Okay.
That's 990.
Wow.
That doesn't seem right, so.
I know, that seems high.
That's not right for theirs.
We might have
So
given-
I might be counting some things I shouldn't be counting. Okay, help me, Jake.
What if we just take off 2 more classrooms for electives? Because that's
Right,
kind of
so
what we did for
Kelly
Lakeland.
Amos- Yeah, so Kelly Amos's classroom is a computer classroom, so that
Couldn't be counted. I don't know the people very well up there.
You take out 2 classrooms, that puts you at 930.
okay. That still seems high. I don't know what they were when, because at one point, it was built to be a junior, senior high school. We had grades 7 through 12
Okay.
in that building.
Okay,
And
now
I
we gotta go
don't
back.
remember how big they got when we decided to split them.
Okay. I'm just thinking the way that we counted Lakeland was right off the bat, we didn't count the first 3 classrooms.
Yeah,
And
'cause
then we
we had
went
in-
back and subtracted 4.
We had industrial mechanics, the art room. But I counted the drama room.
So we might want to consider Timberlake to be more like 28. Using, if we have to have the same number of electives in both places.
Well, and I did that because I took their industrial mechanics out and I took their art out.
Okay.
And then they have 1 less, or two fewer special ed classrooms.
Okay.
Because they don't have life skills in their building.
Oh, I need special, or SLE.
Yeah, that's in that other folder. Did you look the other one at this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so 3, 6, 10, 11, 15. There's nothing beyond, can you scroll?
Yeah.
So 3, 6, 10, 11, 18.
Okay.
How many need to come off?
One special ed. And then they are a title school, but we said we would absorb the title, right?
So would they be
we're-
425 then
425.
For 17?
for 17 rooms?
Okay.
So total elementaries is 2925 in attendance,
That's good to know.
and junior high's 1410, And high school is 2010,
What is middle school?
1410.
1410,
And high school?
2010. So until you max at those points, you wouldn't need another school.
Right. In those grade bands, so
Right.
kind of.
Cause you wouldn't build a half an elementary school or.
It's phasing.
Let's do what we did in Apple when we first built it, just build 3 classrooms.
There you go.
Just add
Add
on
on
every
as
year.
you go.
Well, K through 6 and 3 classrooms, good old style.
It
It's
worked
almost
forever,
like a
right?
one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah. We could reincorporate what is it, the old elementary school of Twin Lakes.
Oh, yeah.
That was a one-room schoolhouse,
Mhm.
wasn't it?
Yep. Okay, so that gives us some targets. I mean, those are, in some of our buildings, we've been that full, and then you're definitely full, so.
And in order to submit this to be like, this is where we wanna be at before we talk about building another school, it's like this across all the schools, or just elementary super high, this is what
Yes.
we
Yeah.
recommend?
Mhm.
Another elementary school, or this
Okay,
high school
middle
high?
school's high.
Okay.
Mhm.
And high for how many, how long
Elementary should
though?
be 29, 25.
Oh,
And how long, because I know we've been full before, but we haven't built other schools, so how long do
Right,
we
so-
are comfortable like this?
Well, by the time we get to the point where we're at this level,
Yeah,
we've been complaining to the board for a while that we're full.
and we
We,
need changes,
we,
yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, so, and we're way outside of what, with these, in these scenarios, we're way outside of the, target numbers for class sizes,
Yeah.
and would have been outside of those numbers for
Good
a while.
years, yeah.
Mhm.
But Garvin's sitting at what right now?
420-ish.
So you still have room for 130.
I know, I'm glad that you brought that up, because like the last time we were zoned out of Garwood, we were at 480. And that was not, like 480 felt very full.
Yeah.
We had specialists on carts, and we had no
Yes.
room for reading intervention, and so
Those
like
are
we
years,
could
yeah.
manage a 550, but it would be a very different experience than.
Yeah,
You're
you're in that tiny
You're
little
managing,
room.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a whole other reason why you've gotta do regular redistricting for those different schools, because if you're at that level and John Brown's at 200,
Yep.
it's very difficult to justify
We need another school, yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
You transition kids and change the boundaries before you build another school.
Totally.
So in the notes, it is said, but can you just add two bullet points? One is, that we'll come back to and just kind of make sure that we're comfortable with it. One is that, like, every 5 years, the district does a comprehensive look at attendance zones to make sure that they still make sense. It might not be about the numbers in the schools, but we may be crisscrossing all over the place depending on how new subdivisions go in. And then the other one that we, just based on what we're talking about right now, is, like at the end of the year, kind of a, end of the year report to the board about where we are enrollment wise in these 3 grade bands in relation to these numbers, so that if we're starting to approach, these numbers in any grade band, we're bringing it to the forefront so we can, long before we get to the point where we have to.
Cause didn't you say that now that the rezoning process is almost a year and a half to 2 years? So you're really gonna have to, I mean, you're gonna have to say like when we hit 80% of the max number, we're gonna have to start looking at what it's gonna take to either redistrict or something else, because you have to wait that long before you can change the boundaries. you could be at that number by the time you get there.
Yep. But if the whole district is growing, you know, this end of the district seems to grow faster because it's more subdivisions, Athol and Spirit Lake and Hauser, more rural, and even some of the areas around Garwood are more rural. But this definitely is subdivision land here, so if we're all growing at about the same, I mean, we could talk about rezoning, but the conversation would then be, are we actually, what are we doing?
Are we really fixing it long term?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or is this, are we just gonna irritate a whole bunch of families, and then we're gonna build a new school and we're gonna have to rezone again anyway?
Right.
So that's the conversation is, are we approaching the point where we really need to be talking about a bond?
Well, that's even if we can build a new school too. I mean, it's not like we can just magically say, okay, we're in for a new school, let's get it done.
It's a very
So
long process.
rezoning almost kinda has to happen if we don't have a choice of
Well,
just
and-
Well,
magically having a
if
school
we're
here.
building this though, so we're watching it so that as we approach it, so we're not waiting until we get to those numbers, but as
Right,
we're
yeah.
approaching them, to be able to say, we don't wanna be here, because those numbers
Right,
are
yeah.
30 kids in a classroom
Yeah.
at the high school level and 25 the elementary level, which probably means 30-ish at 4th and 5th, and, you know, 23,
Right.
24, 25 at the elementary, or at the primary grades, so.
Well,
I
and
think
you gotta
we just have to.
educate the public, because you're gonna need a 2/3 majority vote, and right now for the supplemental
We can't
levy,
even get
we're
50%.
50%.
We're struggling with that, so.
Those are the scary parts.
Anything else?
Do we, I mean, we had kind of the understanding that the numbers for closing a school were just guidelines. Do we want to factor in some language like that with the 5 years?
Like these numbers?
Yeah, I guess I worry about writing down 5 years for rezoning.
Oh, gotcha.
I just
Yeah,
think
we-
about like, okay,
like,
one day Hayden
At
County Charter.
at a minimum, if we put that language
Sure,
in, at a
yeah,
minimum.
so we
we're
could look
going to-
more frequently if
Right.
we needed to.
But
Gotcha.
we need to be at least doing our due diligence and looking at least every 5 years to make
Yep.
sure, because again, it's not necessarily always about the numbers, but just,
Equity.
and buses crisscrossing all
Yep.
over the place
Right.
because we've
Well, and
put a subdivision in a school because that's where we have the railroad in.
Totally.
like we've seen with Garwood getting really close to maximum capacity, but other schools not even close to
Mhm.
stress levels.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see over the next handful of years what happens with our private schools and charter schools too. Like there will probably be a boom a little bit and then it will correct, and every time a school closes, that's a major influx all at once.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the trajectory goes kind of up and down too, right? You know, something that sounds like a great idea, parents are flooding to because they think that way, and then sometimes it doesn't end up that way. So I can see that happening, the resorption happening
Yeah,
again.
and that's happening to us now. You know, we have parents whose kids go like to North Idaho STEM charter, and then every year we get kids back down there. So for some parents, it just doesn't work. Maybe it's the Fridays that aren't working, or you know.
It's the different things. My brother's kids went to STEM charter, and they had multiple reasons of pulling the kids out. Activities, they wanted to be more part of, school activities. Whether they felt like they had any social life at all after school, it was all homework, so they wanted to have a little bit more of a social life. And there's a number of reasons that they pulled their kids out. So.
Right. Parents like to, sounds neat, and they want to try it, and then if it doesn't work for the family, then come back.
And we're always here.
That's the,
Pleasure's always here.
that's the beauty of choice.
Yeah, exactly.
To have those choices. Okay, so, we can end the recording, and then, I will send an invite out for June, and then we'll take a break